Over the last 25 years, I've had the privilege of interviewing and highlighting some truly interesting people. Everyone who is anyone, both the famous and the infamous, from presidents and their first ladies to kings and queens, movie stars and pop stars, captains of industry, heads of state, sports personalities, innovative entrepreneurs, and some pretty fascinating everyday people. Today, I'm proud to introduce you to Brenda Jones, a retired educational administrator whose leadership skills and dedication to lifelong learning has been recognized and celebrated throughout her community. Brenda, what a pleasure it is to talk to you today.
Thank you. Likewise.
Wonderful. So, why don't we start with what led you to become a school district administrator?
Well, back in the 70s, there were not the range of occupations to choose from. And so if you didn't become a nurse or go into the business field, then education, was a very strong option. And those were the three main areas. And so education was a natural fit for me because I had already worked in the business field. I was lucky enough to have a 5 summer long job with what used to be Pacific Telephone, now AT&T, and it gave me a good exposure to what it would be like to work in a large business office. And having already experienced that, I certainly was anxious to try education. And I also had a background in a Masonic organization that gave me the confidence to realize that's probably a natural fit for me. So I wanted to try.
That makes total sense. I now am paying such close attention to the fact that things really have changed for women professionals. Your options are so many more in the generations who have come since you paved the way. So can you actually discuss any notable changes you actually made in the way your district operates? Because those changes are how improvements are actually made. So I'm curious about that.
Well, the first thing that happened was at that time, when I was just getting my credential, there was a glut in the market of teachers, and I was 2 years behind that window of opportunity. Most positions were already filled. All the baby boomers were, that were going into education were there, filling everything. So I could have stayed in the Bay Area and substituted for probably about 10 years, but that idea didn't appeal to me. I wanted to get into education and teach and find out if it was a good fit. Mm-hmm. And so what I did was I moved to a rural area where they were looking for a special education teacher. And in that district, so my first job was a major change for the district, and of course a major opportunity for me as well, because I was the first special education teacher at the high school level or secondary level in that district. And it was, as I said, a small rural district. Mm-hmm. So I paved the way for all the future special education teachers, yes, because they really weren't in existence much at all. And it gave me a job and started a whole new trend in education.
Absolutely. And what it sounds like, because I know a little bit about some of the things you did, it really allowed for special education not to put young people who I like to say are differently abled instead of disabled, are differently abled within an environment where there is still so much that they can learn and still feel a part of the community.
The district that I started in and was there for quite a few years, after I'd been there 10 years, they actually built a new quad complex that was for special education classes that had been opened just since I had been there.
And you mentioned some community organizations that you've been involved in. And I know that you have done some community service that involve religious leadership. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, it's something that I have been involved in since I was 12 to 13 years old. And it was a Masonic organization, which does have religious um, uh, connotation, contact, and history.
Was it the Eastern Stars?
Well, there was that, but before that, my major step into the Masonic organization was an International Order of Rainbow for Girls.
Okay.
At the time, they had D-Belay for boys and Job's Daughters also for girls. But I ended up in Rainbow because it was something that it was a connection my mother had made with the mother advisor, and I went. I had no clue what I was getting into, but it was that membership for about 10 years where I became a state officer and everything that gave me the poise and the confidence to step into teaching like it was, water off a duck's back.
Now that sounds amazing. So I want to know a little bit more about this because I don't think people realize that community service really does build up your confidence and your leadership skills. So how did your work with these groups really help bolster your confidence when it came to your career in educational administration?
Well, it tapped all the things I needed to become more familiar with and improve on and develop. And it was just, in fact, in my who's who bio, I mentioned that specific group, which would also be Job's Daughters and Team Malay for boys. But anyway, because it brings out all of the skills you're going to need in the leadership position wherever you are, business, education, such as knowing how to lead without antagonizing or making things unpleasant, being a good role model, learning how to deal with people and problems, learning how to organize, learning how to explain things. One very important and most important factor was public speaking, because so much work in the Masonic organization has to be memorized.
Oh.
You can't read it. And there are pages and pages of things that had to be memorized. I spent countless hours doing that. But having accomplished that, that was a critical skill. I was not afraid to talk to groups, certainly not afraid to talk to kids. And so I had that confidence. When I started student teaching, I started in San Bruno at Cappuccino High School at the social science department. There were 9 teachers there. By the time I left as a student teacher, I was substituting for all of those 9 teachers. If that district hadn't had a policy about not hiring its subs, I would have started there instead of elsewhere. Immediately, probably, as big as it was.
But it really gave you great leadership skills.
Yes, that organization really was the foundation of the confidence I had going forward. In fact, the first principal I had, I overheard him say to somebody she could teach anything. So I guess that's why he had me coach tennis and do yearbook and do U.S. history and special ed, everything else he could dream up. Oh, a couple of other new classes. I think he was waiting for someone that could start them.
I love it. I love it. So
I got it.
I'm curious, Brenda, do you think it's necessary for an educational administrator to develop strong community ties as you have?
Oh, yes, definitely. Because you have all of the students, and all of that in that area, that one high school had all of the adolescent kids.
Yes.
There wasn't a high school, except a continuation school. And there still isn't. It's still a very small community.
And I just think it gives you such a connection to the community that you have instant credibility.
Yes, it's in a highly regarded position.
So since we've talked all about education and what got you there, tell me a little bit about your interest outside of work.
Well, I have continued my Masonic connection, and I've made some very close, lifelong friends. I have a lot of friends outside of that connection, and I have, except for this year, which is not allowed. This I do a lot of travel, and I've been lucky enough to been able to do that for several years. And I'm talking, like Israel and Europe and stuff, not just short trips. So I've made a lot of connections in the travel world as well, and very enjoyably. So, and there are a couple other community organizations that I'm involved with, but it's a little difficult to have to do everything by Zoom.
Yes.
But done, and also active in church group, and that's also more difficult. But at least there's some communication possible.
Yes. So it seems like you are a well-rounded Renaissance woman, and I'm going to now pick your brain because I really would love to know the advice you would pass on to other educational administrators or even educators just seeking a role in administration.
It's important for administrators to start, of course, as teachers, and they always do, and find out if education is the right direction for them. Some people get into it and they realize they really don't like kids very well. You've got kids, you don't like kids, and get out and do community college work, or older people. And if you like the students, the parents will automatically like you because they will know their kids like you. And administration will like you because they won't have any problems with parents. So it goes very smoothly. But you've got to enjoy teaching. You've got to enjoy kids that you're teaching. So that's preeminent. And that was one of the first things, although it's common sense, but it's one of the first things that we learned from one of our secondary teachers, but this is, college professors, about teaching. And you could just tell the woman just liked everybody, or was very convincing if she didn't.
Indeed. So Brenda, finally, I just would love to know, what's the one thing you'd like the viewer of this video feature to walk away with?
Well, I think one thing is that I've had the energy and the I guess the diligence to go forward with plans that I really wanted to be successful in myself. And it still persists. If there's something I really want to do, I really try to make it happen for myself. Because you're the bottom line, it's the only person that can do that. And so if I measure how important something is for me, and then I'll either go forward, or I'll say, well, I can wait and see if I really want to do this. And sometimes in leadership, there's a point where you have to go forward. And so that was good too. I couldn't always, say, well, that can wait. You can do that later. No, not if you're the leader.
Not if you're the leader, not at all, because everybody is looking to take your lead, as we like to say. Well, I thank you so very much, Brenda. It's so clear that your community has benefited by your dedication to lifelong learning and community service. It's just been a pleasure to get to know you. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you for your interviewing. It was an honor.